It all started with a knock on my door at 10:38 p.m. on a Tuesday. I was sitting on my couch, wrapped in a hoodie, eating cold leftover pizza, and watching a rerun of Jeopardy when the knock came. I figured it was one of my neighbors needing help with their Wi-Fi again. Instead, it was Evan, and he looked panicked. Now, Evan isn't the kind of guy who panics. He's the kind of guy who always seems like he's got two backup plans, a contingency folder, and the universe in his back pocket. We'd lived next door to each other for about a year, and in that time we'd gone from hey man acquaintances to late night beer buddies. I wouldn't say we were close, but I knew enough about him to know he never showed up like this. His hair was messy, his hoodie was zipped wrong, and his eyes were wide in a way that made my stomach flip. "I need a favor," he said, breathless, like he'd jogged up the stairs instead of taking the elevator. And I know it's insane, and you can totally say no, but dude, chill, come inside. He stepped in, pacing immediately, like he was about to deliver a TED Talk titled How to Have a Meltdown in 30 Seconds or Less. "I need you to be my boyfriend." I blinked. He kept going. "Like, fake boyfriend, just for the weekend. You know that wedding I told you about? My cousins? My entire extended family's gonna be there, including my ex." I raised an eyebrow. "The one who cheated on you with her yoga instructor?" Evan pointed at me. "Yes, that one." I sat back, letting the information soak in. "And you want me to..." "What? Hold your hand? Smile in photos? Say things like, 'I'm so lucky to have him,' while we sip champagne?" "Exactly," he said, hopeful now. "Just enough to sell it. I already told them I was seeing someone. I didn't expect them to be so interested. My mom's already planning on meeting you." "You told them we were dating?" I panicked. I stared at him. He stared back. "You'll get free food, an open bar, a hotel suite with a king-sized bed." I raised an eyebrow at that last part. "With a pull-out couch," he added quickly, catching my expression. I hesitated. And then, God help me, I said yes. Because I'd always had a thing for Evan, not in a creepy, obsessed way. Just in a quiet, hopeless, he's straight so don't even go there way. We'd spent countless evenings drinking on my balcony, talking about everything from terrible college roommates to Marvel movies. I liked his dumb jokes, the way he said dude, like it had 15 syllables, the way he always smelled like cedarwood and cinnamon gum. So yeah, I said yes, even though I knew it was a terrible idea. The weekend came faster than I expected. One minute I was packing a duffel bag, and the next we were pulling into a lakeside resort filled with pastel streamers, mason jar centerpieces, and far too many people named Aunt Patty. Evan's hand found mine the second we stepped out of the car. "Remember," he whispered, flashing that dimpled smile, "you're madly in love with me." I rolled my eyes. Yeah. You're the best thing that ever happened to me." But the thing was, pretending wasn't hard. Because Evan was a natural flirt. He threw his arm around my shoulder like it was second nature, leaned in close to whisper jokes in my ear during the rehearsal dinner, squeezed my thigh under the table when his cousin made an awkward toast, and every time he did it, my brain screamed, "He's faking it. You're just the prop. He'll thank you on Sunday, and that'll be it." But his hands didn't feel fake. His touch lingered a little too long. His eyes found mine a little too often. And when we got back to the hotel room that night, and I offered to take the pullout, he just laughed. "Come on, it's one night, we can share the bed." I stared at him. "I don't bite," he added with a smirk. "Unless that's part of the boyfriend act." My heart stuttered. I told myself to keep it cool. Be casual. Don't overthink it. But when the lights were off, and we were lying side by side, the silence heavy between us, Evan rolled onto his side and whispered, "You're good at this, you know." "At pretending?" I asked, voice low. "Yeah," he said. Then, softer, "Almost makes me forget it's not real." I didn't respond, because I didn't know how. And a few minutes later, I felt his fingers brush against mine under the covers. Just a touch. But it was enough. Enough to make me question everything. That light brush of his fingers under the sheets was electric. more than I ever expected. My heart jumped into my throat, and for a moment, I was certain he must have felt it too. But Evan just let his hand rest there. No pressure, no sudden moves, like he was testing the waters, unsure if I'd pull away or lean in. I didn't pull away. Instead, my fingers curled slightly around his. The room was dark, except for the faint glow of the city lights sneaking through the curtains. The hum of the air conditioner was steady and low, almost hypnotic. Time seemed to stretch, each second thick with something I couldn't name. Evan's voice broke the silence. "I didn't mean to cross a line," he said softly, almost like an apology. "I don't even know what I'm doing." "Me neither," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. He shifted closer, so close that I could feel his breath on my cheek. Then, hesitantly, he brushed his thumb across my knuckles. "I'm scared," he confessed. "Not just about this weekend, about everything." I swallowed hard. The vulnerability in his voice caught me off guard. Evan, the confident, put-together guy who seemed to have it all figured out, was scared. And suddenly, I wasn't just his fake boyfriend. I was the only person in the room who mattered. "I don't want to mess this up," he said. "Or you." "You're not," I promised, even though I wasn't sure if I believed it myself. For a few minutes, we just lay there, fingers intertwined, the weight of unspoken things hanging in the air. Then, before I could talk myself out of it, Evan moved even closer, his arm wrapping around my waist, pulling me gently against him. I froze. But this time, I didn't pull away. His hand slid down to rest on my hip, warm and steady. My breath caught. His touch was soft, careful, like he was afraid I'd disappear if he was too rough. "It's just us here," he whispered. No pretending. I closed my eyes, heart pounding, and let myself believe it. For the first time that weekend, Evan kissed me. Not a quick, fake kiss. A slow, searching kiss that left no doubt. His lips were soft, hesitant at first, then growing more confident, as if realizing this felt right. Felt like something he'd been holding back for too long. My hands found their way to his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath the fabric of his shirt. When we finally pulled apart, we were both breathing hard. "God, I'm such an idiot," Evan muttered, burying his face in my neck. "Yeah, but you're my idiot," I replied, a grin breaking through the tension. He laughed softly, the sound full of relief and something like hope. And just like that, the line between fake and real blurred completely. The next morning, the sunlight filtering through the curtains felt like a cruel reminder that reality was still waiting. Evan was already up, making coffee in the kitchenette, looking like nothing had changed. But everything had. His fingers brushed against mine as he handed me a mug, and I knew I wasn't ready to pretend anymore. That morning was the hardest part. Evan was back to his usual calm, cool self, the guy who cracked jokes and acted like nothing had happened between us. But I knew better. I could still feel the ghost of his touch lingering on my skin. We went through the wedding weekend like it was a performance, smiling for photos, dancing awkwardly during the slow songs, and pretending that the easy intimacy between us was nothing but a well-rehearsed act. But my mind kept replaying that night, his hands on me, his lips searching mine, the way his voice had softened when he whispered that he was scared. I wanted to ask him what it meant. I wanted to know if it was real for him too, but I was terrified of what the answer might be. On the last night, after the party had died down and the cousins were drunk and loud in the other room, Evan and I found ourselves alone on the balcony overlooking the lake. The moon was huge and bright, casting silver streaks over the water. Evan lit a cigarette, his hands shaking slightly. "Do you want to know the truth?" he asked, exhaling smoke into the cool night air. I nodded. "I've been pretending to be straight my whole life," he said, "because that's what was expected, what was easier." I was stunned. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" He shrugged, looking out over the water. "I wasn't sure I could. Not to anyone. But with you, it just felt different." I stepped closer, heart pounding. "Me too," I admitted. "I've wanted to tell you for months." His eyes met mine. Honest, open, vulnerable. "You're not just my fake boyfriend anymore, are you?" "No," I said, smiling. "Good," he whispered, pulling me close. That night, we stopped pretending. We let ourselves be real, and it changed everything. The next morning, reality hit like a freight train. We packed up the hotel room in silence. The weight of everything we hadn't said pressed down on us like the thick summer air outside. Back in the car, Evan kept stealing glances at me. His fingers twitched on the steering wheel, and when our hands brushed over the gear shift, the tension nearly made me lose my grip. Neither of us knew how to break the silence. Finally, I spoke. "So, what now?" Evan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know. This weekend wasn't supposed to happen." "Neither was me pretending to be your boyfriend." I shot back, half joking but fully serious. He laughed, a sound that made my chest tighten. "Yeah, fair." We pulled over at a gas station, and for a few minutes, we just sat there, the engine ticking as it cooled. "I'm scared," Evan admitted, "of what people will think, what this means." "Me too," I said quietly. "But maybe it's worth it," he whispered, reaching over to take my hand. His touch was real this time, warm, intentional. We sat like that for a while, the car around us fading away. And in that moment, I realized that pretending had become the easiest thing in the world. The days that followed were awkward, confusing, and exhilarating all at once. We weren't sure what to call it yet, but it was definitely real. Back home, everything felt different. I woke up expecting the usual silence in my apartment, but instead, my phone buzzed with a message from Evan. "Coffee? Need to talk." I agreed immediately. We met at the little cafe around the corner, the one with the too strong espresso and the barista who always got our orders wrong. Sitting across from each other, the air between us was thick with unspoken questions. "So," I said, trying to sound casual, "are we what? Still doing this?" Evan smiled. That crooked, lopsided grin that made my knees weak. "I guess we are." "I didn't think I'd like this," I admitted. "Pretending to be someone's boyfriend." "Me neither," he said. "But maybe it's not pretending anymore." We talked for hours, everything pouring out between sips of bitter coffee. The fear, the confusion, the moments of hope. It wasn't perfect. We stumbled. We argued. But we also laughed harder than I'd laughed in years. Slowly, the fake act started to feel like home. And for the first time, I wasn't pretending anymore. That night, when he dropped me off, Evan hesitated before leaning in. Our lips met. A promise, a question, a beginning. I whispered against his mouth. "No more pretending," he smiled. "No more." Over the next few weeks, Evan and I tiptoed through this strange new territory. Awkward first dates disguised as coffee runs, tentative late-night texts, and stolen moments that felt like little explosions of something electric. We kept most of it quiet. Nobody needed to know how a fake boyfriend gig turned into this mess of feelings neither of us were prepared for. One Friday evening, we found ourselves at my place, half watching some dumb TV show while the rain pounded against the windows. I was stretched out on the couch when Evan slipped behind me, his breath warm against my neck. "You're really here," I murmured, heart skipping. His hands slid under my hoodie, tracing lazy circles on my ribs. "Not going anywhere," he whispered. We moved together, slow and careful at first, exploring boundaries that had never existed between us before. His hands weren't pretending anymore. They were real. Hungry. Gentle. I couldn't believe this was happening. That the guy who asked me to fake date him was now the guy the first wanted to wake up next to. And maybe, just maybe, I wanted to tell him that. But with every step forward came the fear. Fear of what this meant. Fear of being hurt. Fear of what happened if the fake mask slipped off and reality hit hard. One night, lying in the dark with his arms wrapped tight around me, I whispered, "What if this all falls apart?" Evan kissed my forehead. "It won't," he promised, "because this time, it's real." It wasn't perfect. There were moments when doubt crept in, when the weight of expectations and past scars threatened to pull us under. But every time it felt like we were drifting, Evan's hand found mine, steady and sure. We learned to talk through the awkward silences, to laugh at the stumbles, to hold each other close when the world got loud. One afternoon, months after that fateful weekend, Evan pulled me aside at a friend's barbecue. "Hey," he said, voice low but certain. "I don't want to pretend anymore," I smiled. "Neither do I." He leaned in and kissed me, the kind of kiss that melts all the fear, all the uncertainty. "It's us," he said against my lips. "Real us." And in that moment, with his hands warm on my back and his eyes shining with something like hope, I knew it was true. What started as a fake boyfriend charade had become the most real thing in my life. And I wasn't letting go. I still remember the exact moment it happened, like it's burned into my brain with neon lights flashing what the hell just happened. It was a Tuesday night, the kind of night where you just want to veg out and forget the world. I'd spent the day grinding through deadlines and finally collapsed onto my couch, half watching some trashy reality show I wasn't really invested in, nursing a glass of cheap wine. My phone buzzed with a message. It was Evan. I wasn't expecting him to text me, especially not this late. The message was simple but urgent. "Can I come over? Need to talk." Evan wasn't the kind of guy to do the whole dramatic late-night confession thing. He was calm, controlled, the kind of guy who looked like he had a blueprint for everything in life. So naturally, my curiosity went into overdrive. He showed up 20 minutes later, pacing in my small apartment like the world was on fire, hair a mess, hoodie half zipped, and eyes wild with something I couldn't place. "I need a favor," he said. No preamble, no, "Hey, what's up?" Just straight to it. "I'm listening," I said, setting down my wine glass, trying not to show how curious I was. He took a deep breath, ran a hand through his hair, and blurted, "I need you to pretend to be my boyfriend." I blinked. "Wait, what?" "For the weekend," he said, like that made it all okay. "It's my cousin's wedding. Everyone's going to be there, including my ex." I laughed before I could stop myself, but it wasn't really funny. It was just insane. "You want me to fake date you?" I asked, eyebrows raised. "Yes, please. I know it's crazy. I know we barely know each other, but you're the only guy the first can think of who could pull this off." I crossed my arms, trying to look skeptical but secretly thrilled. "Why me?" "Because," he said, looking at me like I was some kind of superhero, "you're calm, you're cool, and you're not a total jerk. Plus, you're pretty easy on the eyes." I snorted. "All right," I said, holding up my hands. "I'm in, but only if you promise this is a one-time thing." Evan smiled, relief flooding his features. "Deal." That was how I found myself suddenly thrust into a world of fancy suits, awkward family dinners, and pretending to be something I wasn't. Evan and I spent the next few days planning how we'd sell the story. We practiced holding hands without looking like we were in a cage fight. We rehearsed how to fake laugh at the stupid jokes his uncle always made. We figured out how to answer questions about how we met without making it weird. And through it all, I realized something. This wasn't just about fooling his family. For the first time, Evan looked at me like I wasn't invisible, like I mattered. The night of the wedding arrived faster than I expected. Evan picked me up looking sharp. Black blazer, crisp white shirt, that messy hairstyle just right. He smelled like cedar and something sweet, like vanilla and danger. We arrived together, hands brushing, and I felt the familiar thrill of being seen in a way I'd never been before. His family greeted us with open arms, strangers throwing smiles and hugs, the kind of warmth that made my chest ache in a way I didn't expect. And then there was her, Evan's ex. She spotted us immediately. Her eyes narrowed like she saw a threat. Evan squeezed my hand and whispered, "Play it cool." I nodded. Through the night, Evan was a master of the act. He pulled me close in photos, whispered jokes in my ear, danced like we'd been doing this forever. But behind his smile, I caught flickers of something else, something real. Every touch was a little too long. Every glance lingered just a beat too much. And when we finally slipped away from the chaos to the hotel room, the masks slipped too. Evan turned to me, voice low. "You're better at this than I expected." I swallowed hard. "Yeah?" I said, trying to keep it casual. He nodded, stepping closer. Almost makes me forget it's fake. His hands found mine again. This time, I didn't pull away. The hotel room was smaller than I remembered from the photos online. A cozy little space with a bed that looked way too big for one person and a tiny balcony overlooking the lake. The city lights twinkled distantly, casting a pale glow through the half-open curtains. We barely spoke as I dropped my bag on the floor and kicked off my shoes. Evan moved to the mini fridge, grabbing 2 beers, cracking them open with practiced ease. "So," I said, trying to sound casual, but my voice was tighter than I wanted. "How do we do this? Act like we're, married?" Evan laughed, a low, almost nervous sound. "I wish. No, just like we've been together a while. Comfortable, easy." I took a sip of my beer, suddenly realizing how dry my throat was. "Comfortable, huh?" I said, glancing at him. He smirked, but there was something vulnerable in his eyes. "Yeah, comfortable." The night stretched out like warm molasses. We talked about everything and nothing. The wedding, our jobs, dumb college memories. It felt normal. Like we'd known each other longer than the few months of casual friendship we'd actually had. And then there was that moment. The quiet space between words where everything shifted. Evan leaned closer. His hand brushed mine. Just a touch at first. Then a squeeze. My breath caught. His fingers traced lazy circles on the back of my hand, like he was trying to memorize the feeling. "Are you okay with this?" he whispered. "Yeah," I breathed. "I think I want to be." He smiled, that small, genuine smile that makes you forget how to breathe. Slowly, almost hesitantly, he reached out, his fingers curling around mine, pulling me closer on the couch. Our legs brushed, and my heart was pounding so loud, I was sure he could hear it. "Maybe we don't have to pretend," he said softly. "Maybe we don't," I agreed, my voice barely above a whisper. We sat like that for a while, fingers entwined, the space between us alive with something unspoken. Later, when the lights were off, Evan shifted until he was lying next to me, our bodies close but not quite touching. Then, slowly, his hand found its way to my hip, warm and steady. My skin tingled. "Tell me to stop if it's too much," he said quietly. I didn't say a word. Instead, I let him pull me closer, his breath warm on my neck. It was supposed to be fake. But his hands felt real. And so did everything else. The next morning, the sun streaming through the curtains felt like a cruel reminder that reality hadn't disappeared overnight. Evan was up early, making coffee with his usual calm, but his fingers brushed mine as he handed me the mug. A small gesture that sent my pulse racing. Neither of us spoke about what happened the night before, but the air between us was charged with new meaning. The weekend passed in a blur of smiles, stolen touches, and moments where I caught him watching me with something deeper than friendship. I kept telling myself it was just the act, but every time our hands brushed or his lips ghosted over mine during a group photo, I felt my resolve weakening. When we said goodbye at the airport, Evan's grip on my hand lingered longer than necessary. "See you soon?" I asked, hopeful. He nodded, eyes shining. "Definitely." Back in the days and weeks that followed, we started texting more. Little check-ins turned into long conversations late at night. Plans to see each other again grew more frequent. And with every message, every call, the line between fake and real blurred more. One night, after a particularly honest conversation, I found myself staring at his name on my screen, heart pounding. Then the message came. "I can't pretend anymore." The message hit me like a lightning bolt, simple but devastating. "I can't pretend anymore." I stared at my phone, heart hammering so loud I was sure Evan could hear it through the line. We'd been dancing around the truth for weeks, texts that lingered too long, calls that ended with silent goodbyes, conversations packed with questions neither of us dared to ask. And now, here it was. The truth laid bare. I typed back slowly, "Neither can I." When we finally met again, the air between us was thick with everything unsaid. We sat at our favorite coffee shop, the one where the barista knows our orders by heart and doesn't bat an eye at our awkward, lingering glances. "Are we really doing this?" I asked, voice low. Evan shrugged, eyes darting around the crowded room. "I don't know, but I know I don't want to go back to how things were." I reached across the table, my fingers brushing his. His hand closed around mine, warm and steady. "Me neither," I said. The weeks that followed were messy and beautiful. There were late-night talks about fears and hopes, about what it meant to finally be honest, with ourselves and each other. There were moments of doubt, a vulnerability so raw, it made us both tremble. But there were also moments of pure joy. The first time he held my hand in public, the way his smile lit up when I called him mine, the quiet morning spent tangled in sheets and laughter. One night, lying in his bed, Evan whispered, "I'm scared." "Me too," I admitted, "but with you, it feels real." I kissed him softly, the kind of kiss that promises safety and belonging. "It is real," I said, and in that moment, I knew. What started as a lie had become the most honest thing in my life. Because sometimes, the best things happen when you stop pretending.